counted them. It's the 14th event here, My Sharpener series at Ideas Block. I'm very happy this initiative is, carrying on, and we will have another meeting, I guess the 27th of November, and another one the 11th of December, and then in January. So they are, the ball is rolling. So if you are interested in getting, involved in that, just, write me an email or get in touch with me on Facebook. We have like a Mind Sharpener page on Facebook, so you can check that out. And I don't know, you can see that later, but we also have like a new logo, like a fancy picture, and we have to thank Roberto and Lucia for working on that. So, round of applause, guys. So we felt, okay, after 1.5 years, it's, high time maybe to, please, come here, hi. So I thought it's, it's time to change like the design, the graphics a bit. So we have a new like revamped logo here. And that's it. So I'm happy to hand over to Vaida. I had the pleasure of reading her BA thesis. We have also like her supervisor here, Dr. Anna. No. Before, yeah, the former.
But she was a consultant. Actually,
consultant.
She helped a lot.
Okay.
In the rank after the supervisor.
Okay. The consultant. Okay. We also have a consultant, and I was the reviewer of the thesis. So okay, it's really interesting, and so we agreed that she will present from her thesis, but as she promised us, it will also be like a bit more general, so we'll see how she expanded her, or kind of popularized her technical analysis into something maybe more digestible for a general public, but no less engaging and stimulating. So without further ado, I give the floor to Vaida. Thanks, Vaida.
Thank you. So hello everyone. I'm Vaida, as most of you know. And today I'm going to cover the topic of film criticism and gender, specifically in language, because as an English student, I was a year ago, I analyzed it for my BA paper. But at first, I would like you all to connect to the Wi-Fi, which is here, and to do a short quiz, because I would really like to know your opinion on some aspects that I have actually results on, and I want to know whether they adhere with my results. So you just have to, the Wi-Fi password is artismore, and the website is this one. And now I'll just make it work. And there will be a PIN code. Yeah, this is the PIN code. And you can just enter it in your mobiles and answer. There are only 5 questions, the general ones. They don't require any prior knowledge or something like that. Yeah, and a nickname. I also
Okay.
So whenever you all join, because I have to count on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. Are you all playing, or is someone not playing? Everyone's playing. Okay, so I have 5 players or 6 players.
You create the nickname. Or you can be transparent.
Only my nickname is kind of obvious.
Baby.
Without.
Yes, and 1, 2, 3. Okay, we have 9 players, so we can start right now. Just look in your phone and answer these questions at your own pace, but still there are 20 seconds or so, but we won't need that much time.
You only have shapes as well.
Yes.
Oh.
Color also.
Why? I don't know why. Okay, we tried it yesterday and it worked.
No, but it's okay because
It's okay.
Yeah, okay.
That's okay.
Except that we didn't have enough time.
Okay, it's okay. This is a very general question, but most of you probably read the reviews. So can we go to the next question?
Yep.
Okay, let's do that. Okay. I will bear this in mind. Okay. More critical criticism, meaning that more negative?
Yeah.
Mhm. So most of you answered that there is no significant difference, that both genders are critical, well, similarly. Oh, interesting. Okay, and I think this is the last question. Address, meaning try to communicate and include the reader in their texts with using pronouns and just addressing questions. Okay. Against no significant difference. So I'll probably cover your answers as I talk about each aspect later on, but there were differences actually. So that's really fun. Okay, thank you for joining in this quiz. And okay. So taking the overall aspect of film industry and gender, it is probably no surprise that male professionals overall dominate the industry. And it doesn't matter whether it's a committee of a film festival most of the time, or if it's a work on, filming work, most probably they are men most of the time. And however, I'd like to cover film criticism only because I wrote my BA paper on film criticism language. And here you can say the latest work by Dr. Martha Lawson. And she's San Diego State University researcher and also executive director of the Center for the Study of Women in Television and Film. And her studies throughout 2007 till 2019 have been considered as, well, the most comprehensive and appropriate, most interesting and accurate in terms of how women are represented in film criticism and also other jobs, but I will be talking about film critics only. So she analyzed around 5,000 reviews, basically taking professional critics who wrote their reviews from the beginning of 2019 till the spring of 2019, and she saw that still male film critics outnumber female critics by nearly 2 to 1, and they continue to dominate the field of film criticism. So also men outnumber women in every outlet of media, meaning print or online media, film reviews, and also no matter what kind of film genre they write about, still men outnumber women in every genre. It doesn't matter if it's a horror movies or romantic comedies, dramas. So basically men dominate in the whole discourse. So I also have the whole article on this if you like to read more about it, or I can send you a link later on. So this is how, throughout the years, this is how people react to it. So first of all, of course, Dr. Martha Lawson says that most of the time men have the last word on quality of the films. Therefore, it might be that the funding that the directors get will be also influenced by these reviews, because professional reviews are read by people who later on fund these new works of directors. And well, if most of the time only male voice is heard, then what about women and what about female directors? And it is interesting that I found, as I was reading this research by Lawson, she mentioned that women definitely more often mention female directors, female filmmakers, and their previous work rather than men. Therefore, again, male writers write more reviews and they don't mention female directors, their previous works or actors, etc. Therefore, they don't get the attention needed for further works. The second quote, again, this is a journalist, Lopez. He similarly, he said that this kind of approach can actually hurt visibility of female-driven films. And overall, we can say that as we write reviews, we always have we carry experience of film viewing with us, and if only male viewers, most of the time male reviewers write, and they evaluate and they say the last word, it's like a vicious cycle. We cannot get out of it, and we always get the male assertiveness and male voice and male confidence heard more often than female. And also very well-known actors like Meryl Streep, Sandra Bullock, Kate Blanchett, and Julianne Moore also presented their stance that female writers should be included more often in film criticism. So this is why I chose this kind of topic for today. And I brought in it in the beginning, and I will also come back to this situation in film criticism overall later in my presentation. Basically, I covered only American film criticism, so I'm not sure about the situation in Britain or in Australia or in Lithuania. Just I have some kind of idea, but it's only about America. Shortly, I'll talk about myself, what I'm doing right now, what I'm studying. I'll present my BA paper topic, why I chose it, and my research questions. Then a very important aspect, data, methodology, and results. It can get quite technical, but I will try to be as simple as possible. And if you don't grasp some aspect, if you're not sure about something, you can always comment or ask questions. And then I'll present my conclusions and drawbacks of my paper and how it could be done differently for further research. And I will, as I said, I will finish with again with a broader aspect towards this issue and what kind of initiatives have been taken in America to raise the awareness of gender inequality in film criticism, and overall what kind of positive changes and whether they are really positive, and what kind of drawbacks they also have. So about me, I finished a bachelor's degree in English this year, and right now I'm studying translation studies at the same university, and I will be writing my master's thesis on literary translation and censorship in Soviet Lithuania. And I'm also, for my work, I'm right now a freelancer. I do translation, and also I'm coming a bit to the activity I really love, so tutoring. So I'm also teaching a bit sometimes. And I'll try to fit in the time, and Davide, please tell me if I'm because I tend to speak a lot and I tend to be fast, so if I'm getting like clumsy sentences or something, just you can stop me anytime and I will explain everything. So yeah. Yeah, let's start. So this is the topic of my BA paper, the official one, and I didn't choose this for this event because it's too technical, I believe, and I wanted to broaden the perspectives. So attitude and engagement in professional film reviews, gender perspectives. I chose this particular topic because as a student still, I found that there is no information on how film criticism and gender is studied linguistically and in terms of evaluation, because we all know that film reviews evaluate and they assess the movie. So what is attitude? Attitude is evaluation, expressing opinion, whether the movie is good or bad, whether it has beautiful cinematography, whether it's funny. And engagement is, so to say, creating a dialogue with the reader, saying you or the pronoun you, or raising questions, and similar kind of instances I will talk about later on. Research questions were quite simple ones. Well, the first one is more complex and it required both qualitative and quantitative study. What are the similarities and differences between the male and female language of professional American film reviews? It might look very broad and unclear, but actually, as I will explain the methodology, you will understand why I chose this kind of, quite a broad question. And the second one is really straightforward, so whether this attitude or whether engagement is more often expressed in both male and female language. So this one I could answer quite fast in my analysis. I love talking about data selection. So basically it was quite a challenging experience, but I loved doing it because basically it helped me to do the actual analysis properly. So first of all, I decided to take 40 reviews. Of course, I counted the words because I had to look whether similar studies on similar topics took also similar kind of collection of texts and words. So I chose 20 male and 20 female reviews. Every review had to be written by a different author, so that there's no some kind of a style dominance in either of the reviews, that each that I don't see as I analyze that something is repeating by the same author. I chose only American critics because I wanted a shared cultural background. And how I verified it, so basically I stalked a lot in people's Facebook and Twitter and everything I could find. I also checked their blogs. I looked for biographical information. Also on Twitter or on Facebook, they show where they're from, where they're based, and where they're working. And so it took quite a lot of time. Then reviews were taken only from 2011-2019 because I didn't want to take another approach, diachronic approach, historical approach. I just wanted to look at today's reviews, and I chose this kind of span, almost 10 years, because it was required by other criteria I will speak about later. Because if I took only 2018 to 2019, I might have lacked the reviews because I needed to adhere to other kind of criteria. I wanted the variety of genres, and the length criterion was also taken into account, so I had to broaden the span of time. I selected, as my title says, only professional critics, and by saying professional, I meant that as one study in 2014 by Taylor showed, Metacritic is considered more professional and more credible than Rotten Tomatoes. So I knew that I will find professional, experienced critics there. And again, only those critics that were marked as professionals by Metacritic website, I chose them only. And the length aspect was also taken into account, the variety of genres. So basically, I wanted also that neither male nor female subcorpus would be marked by romantic comedies only or by horror movies, because each genre, as you can understand, carries its own vocabulary. So if I took only comedies, then I would be most probably only talking about how funny or how not hilarious a movie is. Probably we could expect this kind of evaluation, but I wanted the variety of them. So I also counted what kind of genres and how often how frequent they are in each subcorpus, male and female. Subcorpus is a collection of texts, basically, in normal language, and I wanted this variety of genres. And also, last but not least, a very important aspect was that the reviews are both favorable and unfavorable. So I'll try to explain it, that each subcorpus, 20 male reviews, could also be categorized in 10 favorable and 10 unfavorable reviews. The same with female. I chose this because attitude and evaluation itself carries the positivity and negativity aspect and neutrality aspect. So I wanted to include this, and I also chose the same 10 and 10 for each subcorpus.
Can we interrupt, or do we leave questions for the end?
Of course, you can interrupt.
I was wondering, isn't a review usually with both favorite and unfavorite aspects? Was it easy for you, to find really sharp, favorable and unfavorable reviews? Because I would say that perhaps most of them include both.
Yeah, it was kind of mixed. I tried, of course, but like I verified this favorability and unfavorability by again looking at Metacritic score. And there's a system, if you like, I can explain it a bit more, but I'm not sure if it will take a lot of time. But basically, I looked at that score, and I tried not to take, if I take unfavorable movies, I tried not to take the ones that have from 0 to 10 points, the very low ones only. I tried to mix it up because there are basically most of the reviews I took, they have this mixed opinion. Even the ones that are 100% good quality, they also had some negative aspects. So I chose it just according to the score, because looking through the text and then deciding would be even harder, because they are not, and I think it's good because it shows that they are professional, that they look at both the good side and the bad side of the movie. And so what helped me was the score, and it's ultimately.
And building on that, where did you draw the line? Like 50% or
Yeah,
49%?
So yeah, I have it here, the whole system. So yeah, if the score is as they have the system, so I follow their system. So 61 to 100 is a favorable one, 0 to 60 is unfavorable one. So, but I tried also not to take 60 or 61 because these are the very. This is the line that is very slippery. But therefore, I try to go into like more 20 or then 80 and then 10 and then 70 and then 90 and 0. Also, I think I had some with just a few because it was really interesting to look at the language, because there they were really fierce in these very, very negative reviews, especially men. I will show you later on. It was really funny. So yeah, this is the data selection basically in short. The methodology, so I'll present it also, I'll try to be as simple as possible, because Martin and White's appraisal model is quite complex one. So I chose a combination, and I will later explain why I chose 2 different models, not one. So it's Martin and White's appraisal model to analyze attitude, and Hyland's engagement categories to analyze dialogicity or engagement. So this is how Martin and White's methodology looks like. I chose only the attitude aspect, and they love categorizing, so they have categories and subcategories of categories. I will explain it later on. And you see here, there's also engagement, but I chose not to take their engagement. I chose to take Hyland's engagement, and I will explain later on why. But basically, both of these methodologies are used more in analyzing academic texts. So that's probably why I didn't really choose Martin and White's engagement, because it was directed towards different kind of dialogicity than I wanted to analyze. So this affect is basically personal emotions of the writer. A judgment is assessing human behavior, human skills. Here, in terms of film criticism, it's skills and how good someone is at something. Appreciation is evaluation of aesthetic and non-aesthetic aspects, and I will show examples so it will be clear as I explain. So affect, for example, it requires I, of course, because I speak about myself, how the film what kind of impact it had on me. Judgment, here the object is the object of the whole sentence, and the focus is actor. Here the reviewer says that, here the director became an actor for a few minutes in a movie, and the writer basically wanted to say that he's a better director than an actor, because when he came into the scene, he's basically a very clumsy one, and he just pushed the audiences away by his a few second presence and on scene. And so basically, as you can see, judgment is some kind of a criticizing or praising people's skills here in film criticism discourse. With appreciation, the object of the praise or criticism is inanimate. It's not alive, so it cannot be a person. So here it's a movie, very rich and enlightening, even for an adult. Also, appreciation can in appreciation there's also impact included, but it's not the personal one. But I won't go deep into it because by examples I will explain it later. So would you like to ask something here? Is it clear how they are categorized? Now with now with engagement, it's very simple. Just there's 5 categories, but as I started analyzing the reviews, I understood that taking into account personal asides meaning personal comments, some personal information I would like to add. It didn't really work with reviews because basically review is a very subjective genre, and I thought that it would be extremely hard to find something very personal that the writer wants to express. I couldn't find any clear instances, therefore I just excluded it after some time of the analysis. So reader pronouns is basically 2 types of reader pronouns, you and inclusive we meaning me and you taken together in a group, as a group, that we belong together in some kind of a discourse or such. Questions, they were often, as you'll see, they were really often asked by women in order probably to connect with the reader and to create a discussion, raise some kind of a discussion. Directives basically are imperatives, words that say some kind of a command, that show some kind of a command for the person, for the reader. Here, for example, the writer insists that the reader would think again about something. And appeals to shared knowledge is something that ostensibly both the writer and the reader already know, and they don't have to negotiate it or question it. Something that is already taken as a known thing. Yeah. So I can show you right now that how also what I did during the procedure of analysis. So I put everything in these kind of tables. You don't have to see the numbers. It's okay. Basically to the categories and to positive, negative, and neutral polarity, meaning positivity, negativity, and neutrality, and it looked like this. I had codes for each review. Like I did coding so that I don't have to write the writer's name every time or the title of the review. And then basically also I worked with text just like that, mostly, also on paper and online on my computer. I just highlighted yellow is attitude and blue is dialogicity. So you can see that some reviews have just a few instances and others are full of evaluation, which is often very explicit. And it was really interesting to see whether that male assertiveness that is overall dominating in film industry, whether we can see it in the language of male reviewers and what is the language of female reviewers too. So here, for example, we, and so it just looks like that, and there's 100 pages of it. So I'll go further. Okay, too far. So the overall findings, there are a lot of numbers, but basically I highlighted the most important ones. So the overall findings showed that, and again answered the second question already of my research questions, is that attitude is the prevailing aspect, not engagement, both in male and female reviews, meaning that it's not surprising, they often tend to express their opinion more often than try to connect with you as a reader. So it wasn't very surprising for me. And also we can say that engagement, connecting with the reader is an important aspect, but only a complementary one, and attitude is the crucial aspect in reviews. And these numbers, I did some statistical analysis, and it shows this number 90.72 shows that there's statistical significance in how male reviewers, how male and female reviewers express this attitude, and that basically male reviewers express it more often, that their attitude, than women, and that we can say and conclude that male writers are more evaluative than female. Female reviewers are more descriptive in this way. Starting with the first category, affect. As I said, personal emotions of the reviewer, sorry. They are used extremely rarely. As I remember in the quiz, most of you answered that they tend to express their personal emotions explicitly. So that's nice that you think this way, because it's used extremely rarely. And most of the time it is expressed by men, and in a positive way. It is expressed mostly by verb phrases such as that joke worked for me, meaning that it was funny for the reviewer. And also another example is the one in the bottom. I was impressed by the mood of despair. However, I won't go deep into affect results because there were a very little amount of these instances, and I couldn't make any confident conclusions about affect in film reviews because it's, as I said, used extremely rarely. So we can conclude that professional reviewers, probably as expected, they don't really show their personal feelings about the movie because they're expected to distance themselves from the review, and as they are professionals. Then major findings with judgment. Again, here male language is more dense with that judgment. Here we have categories, two categories of judgment. Social esteem is evaluation of skills. It's the most prominent one, more important in film reviews than social sanction. Social sanction is associated with, well, evaluation of ethics, but it wasn't really, as you can see, only 13 and 10 instances in all, 13 male and 10 female, so 23 instances overall. And they were, as I remember, most of the time, both in male and female texts, they were about how female figure is shown very well in a very sexist way, in an appropriate way. But there were just a few examples. With social esteem, as you can see, again, male language is full of evaluation of people's skills. Both, it might be how good or bad is director, how good were actors, and overall the film crew. So positivity, again, it's very interesting. It's more prevalent, and it is more prevalent in male language. But very interestingly, they are more explicitly critical, meaning that when they are, especially in negative reviews, when they are critical, they tend to even curse or use very informal language. So here, for example, one reviewer calls Darren Aronofsky a whack job, meaning in an informal language, a mad person, or in a very negative way, an eccentric person. So with women, interestingly, I found also they are critical. They tend to criticize, as every professional critic does, but they are not explicit with their criticism, and they don't tend to mention people as they criticize. They often would say that the movie's bad, or the scene was not good, or something like that, but they wouldn't use the object of this criticism, a real person, and they wouldn't name them most of the time. Of course, there were instances, but mostly they are not explicit. And literary devices were also used, most of the time to show negative assessment both in male and female language. And it's often humorous. You'll see later on that they're quite funny kind of comparisons or personifications. Here is a simile comparison that basically the actor is not original, he's like everybody else, and well, he didn't do his job well. But of course, choosing to say it like a lump of mold making its way down a tree limb is much more entertaining for the reader. than just saying that he wasn't that good.
This is the second one is from a female reviewer.
Yes, it's for women. Yeah,
That's a
W
W,
means
right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for saying that. M means male, and W means woman. But these weren't kind of literary devices were similarly used by both genders. They weren't somehow female or male weren't more dominant in using them. With appreciation, as expected, is the greatest category of all compared to affect or compared to judgment, because as expected, professional reviewers have to evaluate aesthetic aspects of the movie, also non-aesthetic, for example, how successful it might be, and how original it might be the movie is. And again, male reviewers are significantly more evaluative in terms of appreciation. And here are three categories. I won't go deep into them, but reaction basically covers, again, the quality of the film, how good the film is, and what kind of impact it might have. Yeah.
What about the emotional influence of the movie?
Yeah.
If it's a good movie, it makes you cry or makes you good laugh. It
Yeah.
means it woman more affected because woman is more emotional. I think.
Well, I wouldn't say that. That they're.
But you're saying that male is more expressing about criticizing movies.
I would say that I'm not really talking about the object of the how female or male viewers are have the impact. I'm more talking about how reviewers are seeing how male and female reviewers are seeing this, but not. I meant that I understand your question, but I was more talking about how writers write about this, not how actually they are more or less what kind of impact they have on the viewers, because it's a different kind of already more a sociological study. But basically, reaction actually deals with the emotional impact of the movie, how it can make you, as you say, cry, or how it can make you laugh, but it is never personal. So basically, this reaction subcategory always deals with the impact on the viewer, not on the writer himself or herself, because, as I said, affect is for that. Appreciation is more of the overall emotional impact you can get from the film. So it was the most often used. Composition is a very technical category here because it deals with the pace of the movie, the narrative structures, so there were not that many instances. And evaluation is not as non-aesthetic aspects of the movie, for example, originality of it and similar, or how non-original it is and similar.
Sure, one question. So
Yeah.
when you have reaction, the reviewer needs to kind of say like something like as a viewer, how not to get confused with the other category, like.
How I didn't confuse them. Oh, it was hard.
I mean, yeah, no, you
Yeah,
didn't,
but-
but just my question was,
Yeah.
how do the authors how can you distinguish like easily between reaction and what was the other
Affect?
one? Yes.
Oh.
Like if, let's say, like if I say like as a critic, like I was shocked, I was surprised,
Mm-hmm.
isn't that a reaction? Or should I say like the viewer is surprised to count as a reaction and not affect?
Mhm. So
How did
basically,
you work around it?
most of the time they were quite explicit, and if they would say I was shocked, I was struck, as it was in I would always take it to the affect category,
So
because it's more personal. It comes from me and from my own experience of viewing the film, because of course the critic is not only a critic, she's also a viewer, so they also carry this emotional. But if it's if they for example address you and say you might cry or you might laugh from this, then it's already a reaction.
Yeah, I see.
And or if it's very like basically what helped me is seeing whether there's distance from that emotion. If they just say I'll show you the example. For example, she's gifted a pulse quickening revelation scene. So he didn't say that I felt this kind of pulse quickening feeling, but you might get it, the viewer might get it, and the beautiful is the first one is reaction impact, the second one is reaction quality. So men would mostly refer to impact, the emotional or aspect of the movie, whilst women would be more concerned with the aesthetic features such as beautiful cinematography, outstanding view or landscape and such. Also, stylistic devices were used very often, similarly as with judgment. Here, one male writer says, it's okay, you need a context for that. So basically, this is how the reviewer finishes the whole review. And it's really entertaining, but you have to know the context. So basically, there's a movie he's writing about, and he doesn't like it. He hates it, and in this movie, there are quite a few scenes where there's a couple and they argue a lot. And the woman would often say, I'd like to see you in another room for a minute because we need to talk. And she says to her boyfriend. So basically, and they have these scenes repeating in the film, so the viewers know that it's happening and they are aware of this. So here the reviewer basically finishes this review. If this movie were a person, I'd like to see them in the other room for a minute. Because but again, it's a really creative way to finish it, not just saying that it was something was bad or wrong. It's a really fun and entertaining kind of writing. Okay, and then I'll be definitely shorter with engagement because besides attitude there was engagement, as we know, and these 4 categories. So reader pronouns, unsurprisingly, was the most often used category, and very interestingly, the only category overall in the whole study which was more often So I found the only category over all of this work that is more prominent in female language, it's questions. So female reviewers would more often raise questions than men, and it's a significant statistical difference. Therefore, we can say that women tend to include the reader into some kind of a discussion, that they want to raise questions, and they are often connected with some relevant today's issues. You will see in the examples. So some qualitative results are that inclusive we is more frequent than you, and men use it more often, but basically this inclusive we is more frequent than you agrees with Hyland's study. He said that you basically makes a distance between you and the reader, so using we, you can connect with the reader better. However, in male language, you is more often than we. And I was trying to interpret these results, and I came up with this idea that basically this confidence that I can see in male language and male reviews is more prominent, and they probably show this confidence that they don't need the support of the reader, that they don't really care or they aren't aware whether the reader is on the same page with them, that they might think differently, but they're sure that there's something wrong with this movie, and they can only, they don't need this solidarity that this we creates. But it's only in some kind of my own idea. Questions often refer to relevant today's issues, and there were some,
Sorry, I just thought about this, maybe you would mention after. When you say the distancing between the male reviewer or the female reviewer to the audience that is reading, have you or did you consider the target audience that, for example, male groups would aim at, as opposed to women. So, say for example, if there's like this structure of power or whatever, and then men speak to their peers only, as opposed to maybe women trying to reach a broader audience.
It's a
You know what I mean?
very nice view. I haven't been thinking about that, but right now I believe that actually what you're saying, it might reflect the actual situation in film criticism, because women definitely use this we more, because there's just a very small amount of them, and there's just a small number of them, and they reach for the viewers, they reach for bigger audience, and men are dominating this industry, this film criticism, and we can say that they are not using it that often, and they even use you in negative reviews, because they don't need that solidarity, they already have it, they can manipulate with it like they want. And I think it's a very good point. Thank you. I haven't been thinking actually about that, but it's nice. I think so. That going back to questions, so there were some feminist issues brought. Of course, it depends. Also, political issues. It depends on what kind of a time it was written, but quite a few reviewers raised questions about political situation in the United States of America, or here is a feminist kind of question, and they were more often raised by women. Questions are also what I found very interesting, that they are often structured in clusters, especially when there's a negative connotation. Clusters meaning that there would be 2, 3, or even 4 questions in a row, question by question, because I think it really boosts the negativity.
Sorry, are these rhetorical questions, or they're genuine questions more tonight?
Are they more rhetorical or more just?
Yeah.
I would think they're rhetorical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're often broader,
Mm.
but with politics, for example, they would sometimes, if the movie is somehow considered as political situation, they might raise some very concrete, very detailed event or something. They would actually write about it more, and they would often end that question, the review with that question, because I didn't really put I think examples also when I had the defense, but I remember both men and women sometimes finishing their reviews with some political question, right? That was when someone was a president back then, it was like that, and now we have Trump and we have such and such situation. They are quite serious about this, especially, and not necessarily when the film considers politics, but they would also just somehow they will go to these questions they probably are like very concerned about.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Why you chose the American film industry?
Oh, why?
What's the reason?
Why not British or? Yeah.
Why not Europe? And
Yeah,
it's
okay.
maybe more close to.
So, yeah, right. But I wanted to read in original language, and for example, I cannot read. We have in Europe, we have very strong film industries in the Netherlands or in France and similar, but I cannot read any of these languages. I don't know them. And I was studying English, so basically I had to write my BA in English, and I wanted to have one cultural background, so I didn't want to mix American, British, Australian, English, because there should be and there are cultural and linguistic differences. So I remember my supervisor recommending to choose one, and I chose American, not Australian or British, because I'm probably more familiar with American, and basically I know that it's very wide, and I wouldn't have problems with finding female reviewers or finding male reviewers, and because data collection, as I was presenting, it was quite a challenge to fit into all of these criteria. So I thought that the variety in film industry in America would help me. So
were the reviews mainly of Hollywood blockbusters, or were they varying genres and varying demographic? The words failed me, but like were they some art films and some,
Yeah.
you know, in
You mean
different-
art house or
yeah,
Hollywood
or
more?
little Hollywood, you know, major Hollywood films.
Yeah, it's definitely easier to find reviews on Hollywood blockbusters and films. It was really easy for me. But as I said, I wanted both that variety of genre. So I also tried to look up for more of an art house films, but especially with these Metacritic, I think, and Rotten Tomatoes too, there's just more information on these Hollywood films. So most of them, yes, they are Hollywood. They are of well-known actors and directors, as I recall. And I didn't choose documentary movies because I wanted to take this acting aspect into account, so that there wouldn't be any mix. For example, I would take 5 documentary film reviews in male subcorpus, and then 0 reviews in documentary in female. So I just wanted to take this acting because there's that judgment aspect in my work, and it deals with skills. And most of the time, these skills are acting or the similar. I just excluded documentary overall, and yeah, most of them were comedies, horror movies, also sci-fi, and most of them were from Hollywood, right?
I'm sorry, we have questions in clusters ourselves, so just one more. Would it be possible that rhetorical questions are used more often in negative reviews? It's just an idea. I don't know. Maybe it's something interesting to look up, because I always imagine like someone asking a rhetorical questions in a slightly angry voice.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. So it might be.
It might be.
I don't know.
I would like. I could interpret, but I don't have the actual results, so I wouldn't like to
No,
like
no, I
see.
know, but
It's
an
a great
maybe.
idea. I think I should look, because there weren't that many of these questions. I could look them up
Yeah,
and
because
see.
there might be, as you said, like genuine questions, and you know, like things like stimulating readers to think for themselves, and rhetorical questions. So it might be interesting, pragmatically speaking, to distinguish. I mean, not to give you more work, but just in general, like as a future research path, like to see like, you know, if they may be used like in mostly negative reviews, or at least expressing like negative remarks.
That
I
would
mean-
be that would be interesting.
Okay.
It just there's most of the time there's a distance between the actual movie and the question, because the question is often already a broader discourse. Here, for
Yeah.
example, there's a movie about a woman who's I don't remember really, 19th or 20th century, the beginning, something like that. She is a protagonist of the movie, and she's active and has a lot of men, and there's just there's a very some kind of they try to show a very, I'm not even saying a feminist, but an extreme way feminist person, a woman. And there's a question: has there ever been a time accepting this woman free, some bright and independent? Already, this question goes to today, to our times, and it would be interesting to see whether there is a correlation, some kind of. So conclusions from my BA paper are that professional critics detach from their personal emotions, and this finding agrees with Clayton and Cleven's study on film criticism language in 2011. Also, as we saw, male assertiveness prevails in the discourse of film criticism, and it again supports Lawson's studies throughout the years. I noted here only 2019, but basically throughout the whole the years of her studies, that male voice is basically, well, both in quantity and here, as we see, linguistically is more prevalent. Women tend to describe the film rather than evaluate it, as we saw, and men are more critical. It also supports previous studies, and also, as we saw, the trends of engagement or dialogicity are not as marked by gender as it is with attitude. So there is no significant difference whether male or female reviewers try to connect with you as a reader more often. It's very similar. And suggestions and drawbacks in my study, basically, I didn't include. Graduation is basically boosting or mitigating your argument. So I didn't include this, but I think it's a very interesting topic, and it could be included if the scope of my paper would be, well, bigger of size. But it would be very interesting to see how they try to strengthen the argument or mitigate it. Also,
In the sense of saying somewhat or extremely.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
For example, I didn't say an example. For
Mhm.
example, extremely beautiful,
Yeah.
or very nice,
Mhm.
or perfectly great at something. So all these words, I highlighted them as one
see.
instance. But if I took graduation into account, I would have to even broaden the topic. But
Lot
I
of
think
work.
it's a great it could be, if it was just a longer work, it could be added definitely. A diachronic analysis, meaning a historical perspective, how film reviews changed throughout the years, how language of film reviews, both the male and female reviews, changed throughout the years. A study on American and Lithuanian film reviews and gender. However, well, in Lithuania we have very few film reviewers, especially professional ones. But as a reader, I myself found that there would be a lot of differences. I cannot say, but I think there would be differences between how American and Lithuanian reviewers write, because in American reviews I found a lot of even explicit, cursing, or being very, as you saw, entertaining and very creative and quite simple in their vocabulary. In Lithuania, we tend to, the film reviewers tend to show how sophisticated their language are, and sometimes it's very hard to read the reviews if you're not from their community. Therefore, probably here in Lithuania we don't read them because they're not very accessible to every reviewer.
That's why there are few reviewers.
Yeah, and we have more women, I think, than men here in Lithuania, especially the professional ones that have a lot of experience. We have more women here. And other theoretical framework could be taken, because as I said before, I had a combination of methodology models. I didn't take Martin and White's engagement because it covers, it's very hard to explain, but basically the sourcing of information, where in linguistics it's called also something like evidentiality. So basically how the information was sourced, and it was definitely not, I didn't need that for film reviews, and I wanted something like this, very actual categories, that actual instances I could look for, because as it just was going through the text and marking, I really needed to know what I'm looking for, that it's not too abstract, that it's something exact that I would know. And yes, and just finishing my presentation, as I said, I wanted to broaden the topic. So I, in past few days, I did some research on how the situation in America has changed so far in terms of film criticism and gender inequality. So the first is just statistics, but very important ones is the red numbers you see are from 2007, and the green ones from 2019. So there's a difference of 11%. We have more 23 and 34 women, and 77 to 66, as you can suppose, it's men. So, for me, it didn't seem quite a great number, but then I thought that in 2018 and 2019, I just checked the results of 2018 I used for my BA paper, and the 2019 there is already a 2% change. So it's I believe that it's also an influence of Me Too movement and such a situation right now in America, that it's quite a great achievement, I believe, because it's quite a fast change. Cherry Picks is a very nice and fun place, a website that two women actually founded, but it's, from my own perspective, it's quite isolated, because here you can find reviews of various movies, mostly Hollywood, but they are written only by female writers, only by female reviewers, and it's probably good for research material, because you'll get all the female reviewers that they collect there, but it basically isolates themselves from the whole film criticism industry and community. Stylist is a website, like a journal online, and they, I think in 2018, a year ago, they had this competition of a female film reviewer because, well, they wanted more women writing about films. So they had this competition. You just, as a female, only a female, male reviewers couldn't compete. As a female reviewer, you had to write some kind of a review and then send it to them, and if you win, you become a stylist film reviewer. And the fourth one, and probably the most formal one, I have to see it in my papers because I have to read a bit on it. So Critics Groups for Equality in Media, it's still new, aliens, and it aims to improve the conditions for women, people of color, and LGBTQ journalists who cover film and television. And they're trying to help them get better pay and also be represented better and be seen more in media outlets, at various media outlets. And there are quite a few communities who joined it. As I said, it's an alliance. So, for example, African American Film Critics Association, the Latino Entertainment Journalists Association, the Online Association of Female Film Critics, and some other ones. And I would like to finish with a quote. And here basically actor Brie Larson says that we need to embrace the diverse voices we have in film criticism and help them so that we get this representation of the audience, because in 2016 we had a study on the audience of cinema in America, and they actually found that more than half of all reviewers are women. So if male voice is the prevalent one, and if they keep talking more about male directors and they don't mention female filmmakers, as I said before, then this is the vicious cycle I was talking about, and they cannot really represent the audience. And basically we are writing the reviews because we want to represent the audience and we want to reach the audience. So this is the references, most of the references I needed for today. And this is a goodbye, and probably not goodbye, we have a discussion, but yeah. So thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you.